Motivation can be really hard to hold on to sometimes. It can slip right out of our grasp. That's why we're so excited to bring out this episode from the archives with Aunia Kahn, where we had an opportunity to dive deep into this idea of navigating fluctuating points of motivation, especially when we're dealing with chronic illnesses or other large challenges in our lives. Aunia shared powerful insights about starting small and reigniting motivation over time, the importance of self-compassion, and how action can sometimes generate the drive to keep going. We also touched on distinguishing self-worth from our achievements, embracing authentic experiences, and the critical need for community support. Don't miss out on this incredibly powerful episode, and we hope that it inspires you as much as we did by making it. Enjoy. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Kick-Ass Conversations with Louise and Kim. And today we are joined by Aunia Kahn of Rise Visible. We are so happy to have you here, Aunia.
Oh, thank you. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So we will give a formal introduction to who you are in just a little bit. But just like every week here, we want to start off. Louise, how do we start it off every week?
We talk about celebrations and how our week is going. And I'm going to start.
Yes, you are.
Because it's my birthday today. So I'm celebrating my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Not a big brouhaha. I won't be hitting the pubs with, 80 million other Irish worldwide with green beer today, but it's a celebration nonetheless. So here I am. It's a little pat on the back to say, right, here we go. So yeah, that's what I'm celebrating today.
I love that, like, the world celebrates with you.
That's right.
Absolutely. It's so funny. I have a very vivid memory of 3 years ago sitting in an Irish pub with no one else on this day. Not another soul. I was with two friends, and there were empty tables and one very lonely bartender.
Well, it was 2020.
It was 2020, and things shut down the very next day. Yeah. So that was like very unique, to be in an Irish pub with no one else
On your birthday.
on this day.
On the 17th.
So yeah. So weird, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, happy birthday, Louise.
Thank you.
Here's to another beautiful revolution around the sun.
Absolutely. Aunia, how about you? What are you celebrating today?
Oh, geez. I'm celebrating something I shouldn't say, according to Kim. I'm celebrating budding, beautiful flowers outside. I was sitting here and I looked out and I noticed that, oh my goodness, there's tiny little white flowers. It just kind of happened out of nowhere. And I'm like, it is here. It has arrived. And she's like, don't tell Louise.
As snow, literally a burst of snow just whited out my window. So where in the world are you, Aunia?
Sure. I'm in Eugene, Oregon.
Oh, nice.
Beautiful country. Yeah. Nice.
Beautiful.
So
Kim?
yeah, we all have something white outside our windows. Mine is more gray than white. It's a gray sky, which really is wearing on me at this point. I'm not celebrating that. I am celebrating a really good conversation with my husband. It has been a energetically very challenging week and for me. And my husband just got home from a work trip and he was like, how you doing? I'm like, nope. And he stuck with it, and he is here listening. I'm not saying this for his benefit. I'm saying this is truly, I am grateful that after 16 years of being together, we continue to learn how to communicate with each other. We continue to learn more about ourselves and each other. And he just said, I love you. So I can't look over there in the chat comments because I'll start crying. But that it's even in a really shitty week, that little ray of sunshine can come out in a way that is, it's not magic and flowers and unicorns. It's just peacefully talking to somebody that you love and feeling heard and seen. So that's what I'm celebrating today.
Beautiful. That is sunshiny.
It is sunshiny.
On a gray, gray day.
On a very great day. So, Aunia, I am going to now tell the world who you are based on your bio that you shared with us. And then you get to tell us more about who you are.
All right.
So Aunia is the CEO of Rise Visible. With 24 years in the industry, she is a highly sought after digital marketer, strategist, designer, and public speaker. Rise Visible was named a top ranking woman-owned digital agency by Clutch and is a certified disability-owned business enterprise. Aunia is also an internationally renowned artist, which I have to tell you, I was checking out her artist site earlier, and ooh, some gorgeous stuff. Renowned artist and photographer, and has been in over 300 exhibitions in 10 countries. She founded the nonprofit Create for Healing, is the host of the Rise Above, Be Visible podcast. She has been featured on Yahoo, Prevention Magazine, Authority Magazine, and Entrepreneur on Fire. She is also identified as a disabled business owner in STEM. And I'm not going to do a disservice with the names of that. I will let you share your own story. Aunia, we are so glad that you are here and sharing yourself and your talents with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
You're so very welcome.
That's just lovely. I want to hear about like your journey, your career journey, and how you got to this place. I looked on your LinkedIn profile, and the path that you've taken to this digital unicorn space. I think it's just lovely. So, can you share a little bit about what that journey has been like for you?
Sure. Let me try to shorten it. Yeah, it's one of those things. So my journey into the space of being a digital marketer, web designer, graphic designer, all of that part of it really wasn't something I had a focus on. So when I was younger, my ideal job was to be a therapist, and that was my passion. But unfortunately, during that path, things completely shifted, and how I got into what I'm doing today was really based in necessity. However, as I sit here right now, 25 years later, I feel like it was the right path. In the beginning, it didn't really feel like that because I was kind of pushed into making choices. And how I was pushed into those choices was while I was in school. I moved to a different state. I moved from Michigan to St. Louis, and I was trying to kind of start a new life. I came from a very challenging home environment, and I wanted something new, somewhere different, change of scenery. The person I was really close to at the time was from there. So I was like, well, maybe we should try. Loved it, got there. Didn't realize in my teens just how epic it is to live in a different state. Not knowing the roads, not knowing, where your grocery store is. I mean, I like change, and that was exciting, but it was also terrifying. And this is where everything changed. So as I was on my way to go to a brand new job, I was doing dental assisting, and that's what I did right out of high school. In Michigan, you could do that without any sort of degree, and you could make really good money. So that's where I was investing to go to college. And I was driving there. I got there. I was nervous. It was a new job. I was like, new people, new state, new job, new everything. And I walked in, and within the first, I want to say it wasn't within the first 30 minutes. It was a very short time I was there. All of a sudden I heard somebody screaming from the break room. And I ran to the break room, and everybody was standing there watching 9/11. And I was already uncomfortable. I was already anxious. I already live anxious anyway, And my first instinct was just to ask to leave. I just said, "Can I leave?" And they were like, sure, I guess. Like, no one knew what to say. And of course, they were a group of people that knew each other. And I'm sure they understood that I felt like the outcast. I wasn't really interested in being like, yay, let's have trauma together. I don't know you, So I went home. And I started to volunteer at the Red Cross. I used the money that I had to kind of hold steady. And then when I tried to find new work, the dental industry really wasn't hiring because it wasn't a necessity, right? Like nobody was really like worried about the dentist right now. So I had a hard time finding work. And that's when I shifted into something I already knew, which was I had already been building websites for years. I had already been doing graphic design. I'd already been doing all that for fun. It was not at all like a job or even something I thought would be a job. It was for fun. I made music and I made my own CD covers and, I built websites for myself and my friends. And so I had to resource. And I thought, well, maybe I can lean into that. Maybe there's some way that I could use that as a way to pay my bills. So I knew a friend in the industry and I knew a friend of a friend, and I got an interview and they kind of laughed at me in a very nice way. Like, like your portfolio stinks. I left feeling bummed. And then I just went on my own and I just did my own. And I asked friends and family and I tried, to find any way to get jobs. And I did that all through the next numerous years, because also during that time, which was even more fun, I was dealing with health issues. So I was having these health crises coming up. And for me, I associated it with moving. I associated it with relocating, getting a job. I associated it with the World Trade Center. I associated it with high levels of childhood stress. And that was another reason why I had to shift, because I couldn't just work a 9 to 5. I had to find a way to, adapt. And so that's how I got here. That's where I'm at. And I have no complaints. I love what I do. It put me in a really good space. But I do love psychology, and that is my big love. And that's one of the reasons why I do that other project, because I still have to do something, in that area.
I find it so interesting that, oftentimes it are these little seeds that we already have going on, right? That draw us or can draw us into a place where we may never have imagined, right? And yet there's that spark or there's that connection somehow that can feed you and that can move you forward in that career. And like you said, like completely unintentional, but yet very intentional, right? Knowing what was going on in the economy, in the world, with your own health, that you had to make choices around work that allowed work to fit into your life, right? Knowing that you couldn't fit into that 9 to 5 job. And already, right, like I talk a lot about turning the tables, right? Because we often say like how we show up for work and not how work shows up for us. And it sounds like you, under all of these circumstances that were going on, were actually able to do that a lot sooner than a lot of people.
Yeah, I think the funny thing about this is when I look at it, I've always been an entrepreneur. And I feel like sometimes, I'm sure you guys maybe agree with this, the universe sometimes just shifts your path for you, right? Like I just feel like sometimes that happens. Like you think you want something really badly, and the universe is like, no, you really don't. Like you don't, we're going to shut the door. And then you're really upset. But then it comes to where you're like, oh, this makes all the sense. And when I look back, I have this picture of me when I want to say like 6, and I'm sitting at my grandma's table. I've got an old rotary phone. I've got stacks of wallpaper books. I've got a pen in my hand with, I think, Santa on the bottom of it, like, and I'm all like, hello? I'm an interior designer. So as I look back now, I feel like I've always been that person. And I really wanted to be a part of something else. And being a therapist wouldn't work for me. I'm too sensitive. I take it home. I can't detach in that way. So that job, if I would have progressed in school, would have probably been a detriment to me in the long term. And I would have had to probably pivot careers anyway. So the universe was like, no, got me early.
That's actually a question Kim and I do a lot in our workshops when we're helping people kind of like reconnect with the work that they do. It's like, what did you do as a child, right? Yeah. Where were you? What were you doing? What did you enjoy? Because they're often it's all of these other things, all of the shoulds that kind of get piled on top of us, right? Like we should be doing this, or we should be. Yeah, lots of that. And when we can come back to like who we were as kids, we didn't carry all of that.
Right.
weren't buried under that pile of should.
That's
Well, and
right.
it's so interesting because in the work that we do now, so independently outside of your kick-ass career, although we do it inside the collective as well, Louise helps individuals who are pivoting in their career, and I help entrepreneurs who are pivoting in their entrepreneurial pursuits. So it's not necessarily a hard pivot for my clients, but very often it's, well, I did this, and now I want to do this. How do I shift that?
That's right.
And so we're constantly pivoting if we give ourselves permission to. And I think it keeps us moving sometimes back towards who we originally were. And sometimes it's because we've opened ourselves up to, ooh, what did I learn new that, yeah, I really enjoy this. How can I follow and bring more of that in?
Absolutely. And we need people like you guys to help people in those transitional periods, because even for myself, being alone during that time was very difficult. And if I had somebody that could help me with that, that could help, see the bigger picture rather than just being in survival mode at the time, that's really helpful.
Yeah. So, and it's oftentimes when we're in all of this constant change and flux that there's so much going on that we kind of like get stuck. We try to ground because we can't process all of the stuff that's happening, right? And so that kind of brings us into our topic a little bit today around like finding that way to pull yourself out of the muck, or to avoid some of the muck, right? It's one thing to get mud on your boots. It's another thing to be, knee deep in quicksand. I want to talk a little bit, Aunia, about, especially when you think about how you have navigated change. What are some of the things that rise to the top or bubble to the surface for you when you think about like what pulled you through some of that chaos or that change? What's that the motivating factor or that thread, that rope that pulled you out of the muck?
I don't know if it's something innate in me or it was something I mirrored or mocked off of somebody growing up, but I've just always had this feeling of when something happens, you just have to do something. You can't, not making a choice is making a choice. And I think because the extreme amount of health challenges that I've had with these diseases that are very unknown and very complicated and affect the most important parts of my life, and then growing up, of course, in the challenging environments, there wasn't a choice for me not to pivot. I mean, there is a choice. I could have, during that career thing, became homeless, and I could have let it get to me, and that's and no judgment. I want to be clear with that. No judgment that I took that path, because I was lucky. There were things that opened up. There were other things that brought that to my attention, and not everybody is going to have that, right? But knowing that in those dark moments, that's okay first, right? Like, it's okay to be dark. It's okay to have a tough time. It's really okay to feel the mud on your boots, because we live in a society right now that is so hyped up on toxic positivity. It's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. Put your big girl pants on, put your big boy pants on, just move through it. And is there power in that? Of course there's power in that. There's power in getting up and doing the thing, but there's also great power in being able to feel it, be there, know what's happening, accept it, be okay with the anger, the depression, the feelings, and then you got to get back up. It's just that getting back up. It's that small moment of just standing back up again. And the quote that I love more than anything is a Japanese proverb, and is fall down 7 times, get up 8. Right? So you just have to get back up. And it doesn't matter if you just get back up on your knee, or you just get a little bit up on your arm a bit. Get back up doesn't mean completely get up, get your clothes on, soldier on, go back out and fight the battle. Sometimes get back up just means sit up. It's these tiny moments. And I think as people, we have this desire to go from one to the other so quick. Like, we're grieving a loss. Well, you should just get over that. Well, there's a lot of in between. There's a lot of gray area that the world doesn't save space for. It isn't just you're not doing well, you're doing well. It's like this gray area is so important for us to know that it's all a journey. It's okay to do that. And I think those are the places, because I did have such challenges with people in my life who were very difficult on me and there was no gray area, that I learned to give gray area for myself. You know what? It's okay today if, you know what, I just get out of bed. It's okay today if I only wash a dish. It's okay today if, you know, it's okay. And I think giving grace to women, I know men need this too. It's not gender specific, but women live a lot in the space of like, you must have babies and you must do the dishes and you must go to work and you must do this, because we are superhuman in some aspects of what we can do. I think if a man had a baby, they wouldn't live through it. You know? But, you know, giving us the grace to not do. And the last piece I'll say is we also live in a society of burnout is a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. It's actually going to deteriorate your health. It's going to ruin your relationships. And it's not going to do anything for you but give you a pat on the back that you're going to seek dopamine and want more of that later. It's not worth it. So I think those are the things that I think about when I think about motivation, or when I'm down in the dumps, how I get back up is like, I don't pressure myself. It's okay to take your time. I'm a type A personality. That's not easy for me. It's not, I don't live there easily, just so you know, because some people are real chill. I'm not. I'm like, check the boxes, do the thing, get it done. It's just for me to give myself some grace is an everyday effort to keep myself in that, because I give everybody else grace, but I don't give myself grace. And I think we all know that, you know, with ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. As high achievers, people who are high achievers, high performers, we have a tendency to think we can just push through. And that's part of what's been challenging for me actually this past week, is a recognition that for a long time I've been operating in that space of, no, I've got this. I'm fine. I've got this. Instead of leaning into and allowing myself to receive. I've asked for help, which is great. That's a step up, right? From the old former me that would not even ask for help. And yet it's that where motivation comes into play, is that space between, yes, there are big things that I'm doing in this world. There are big things I want to do in this world. And to me, the motivation is, how do I get to the end of today feeling a little bit better than I felt in the morning?
That's right.
Right. And that's okay. As you were saying, it's okay that that's my motivation for today, because sometimes, again, going back to that, we're used to ticking all the boxes and getting it all done, performing at very, very, very high levels. Mm-hmm. And as somebody who has dealt with burnout and who works with people dealing with burnout, it is not a place for us to thrive. It is not a place for us to even function, quite frankly. We're just surviving. And so finding motivation in those times isn't about finding the big M motivation. Right. It's creating motivation to get the help that we need, to get the support that we need, and to keep moving forward on our terms, not on society's. So,
that's right.
Yeah, it's the whole bigness of it all, right? Like, I think we think like we've got to just do it all, right? If we got mud up to our knees, we got to jump out of the mud puddle, shower, change, do our hair, get dressed, hit the road. Like, we got to do it all, right? And Aunia, like you were saying, like sometimes it is like, just like, do we maybe just get a toe out, or right? Just sit up,
right?
Like, we don't have to do it all, but I think that we get stuck so easily thinking that the only way out is all the way out.
That's right.
It's not true.
That's right.
So what are some of the things that you say to yourself when you're trying to find that motivation and get through?
So the things that I say to myself are often, usually the place where the motivation lacks for me is when I'm having a crash with my health, or I have burnt myself to a crisp, which is a big thing I'm trying to break, because for somebody who was bedridden for 11 and a half years, it's hard for me when I feel good, because obviously there's been a big shift in the last 2 years for me with the diagnosis and treatment and ability to, be in a much better space, to not go after everything that I feel like I didn't have before. And it's hard not to overcompensate and be like, it's worth the burnout, right? But it's not, because I'm not 25 anymore, right? That's fine back then. Now I'm, I guess I don't want to say my age, but I'm mid 40s and I'm like, oh, like this is real life growing old. Like I'm noticing my body can't do that anymore. And so the things that I really try to say to myself is just really nurturing calm things that the inner critic doesn't say. I try to challenge the inner critic, because there's so much personal inner critic, and then inner critic from my childhood, inner critic from the world, right? And it's just coming in and going, you know what? It's okay. It's totally fine. Right. But I will say this, and this is not a good part of it, but I'm saying it because I think people need to know this, is I'll say like, oh, it's good and it's fine. But the other part of me is like, well, you're such a high achiever anyway that you've already done so much, so it doesn't matter. Right. But that's not important. The importance is that I'm trying to talk myself down and really talk to myself. Because I also think people that are high achievers, or people that are extremely motivated, no matter what their reason is, even if they're not motivated all the time, but maybe they have these motivated moments, is that this motivation is this like driving force of like who you are as an identity, right? Like this is your identity, and how you achieve is not your identity. And that's been a big thing for me, is trying to tell myself like achievement is not my identity. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. In the end, if I'm on my deathbed, what really matters? The relationships with people, the conversations I'm having like this, the way that we're helping the world, the community. It doesn't matter if I won this award and won that award and checked this box off and checked that box off and got my work day done 5 hours early because I've worked 10 times as hard, or I've moved a 300-pound furniture on my own with my feet because I didn't want to ask anybody. You know what I mean? So that's what I do. I just try to be kind and just tell myself all the nice things and talk to myself like a person, because we don't often talk to ourselves like human beings. We often don't look back and reflect back. Like they say, talk to your inner child, right? Talk to that little person, the person that was criticized, or the person that went through a lot of that challenging, that brought those traumatic responses of over accomplishment, right? And then you have to like really be with yourself. You have to be with the uncomfortable. You have to be with it all and just accept yourself for the glory that you are, which is not sometimes easy. Every messy bit, illness, all of that. Like I didn't want to identify with my illness. I'll give you this as an example. I didn't want to. Didn't like to talk about it, wanted nothing to do with it, completely ignored it. And if you Google me, you vanity Google me, the first thing that pops up, I don't know if you've seen these on some comedy shows where famous people will put in their name and then they'll drop the list of all the things that people search, right? Mm-hmm. What are the top things? And of course, I did that with myself. The first thing is illness. And it sucks. Like it really does. Like it's like, why would that? Isn't there something more about me? Mm-hmm. But in the last 2 years, and really in the last year, I've stepped into going, you know what? But it is me. And I have to love every messy, screwed up, complex thing, because we all as individuals are human beings that are broken in places, and we're fragile in places, and we're super amazing superheroes in places, and all of those deserve to be loved and nurtured. And that's another space, I think, to kind of talk to yourself, like being okay with all of it, every bit of it. There's not one part of you, even the deepest, darkest things that you keep to yourself, they're all human and they're okay.
And all worthy of love.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. As long as you're not hurting anybody or being crazy.
Right. Well, there you go. Caveat.
We just have to, you know.
Big asterisk there on that.
I think we can leave the clinical diagnosis of sociopath in its own box.
That's right.
I think it's so interesting too, right? As you're talking, Aunia, is oftentimes I think we feel like motivation comes externally, right? Like there's like lighting a fire under your ass, or right? Like it's almost like that who's that trainer beside us that is driving us forward or moving us towards that goal. And sometimes that it's external. Sometimes it's that critic, right? That is pushing us forward. But as you're talking, and oftentimes I think we forget is that it's that fire in your belly, right? It's that warm place inside when you are aligned with your values, when you're aligned with who you are. That fire comes from a different place. It doesn't come under your ass, right? It comes from deep inside. And
Not if I've had a taco. No.
Truth.
Yeah, so it really is. It's a different kind of motivation that we're talking about, right? We're not talking about the cheerleader to motivate us. We're talking about like a deeper alignment that can pull us through some of those darker times.
Absolutely.
Well, it's interesting that you said that it's not that cheerleader. It's also not that drill sergeant. Because Aunia, as you're talking about that inner critic is very often the drill sergeant that is motivating us to do things, right? You suck. You got to get on that treadmill. You suck. You got to do, it's like, right? And so that inner dialogue that can be intrinsically motivating, sometimes can be intrinsically damaging.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I want to know, there's often this, like, I think chicken egg scenario that comes with motivation and action, right? Does motivation cause action, or does action cause motivation?
Yes.
That's right. I'd agree.
Done. Next question.
I often feel like we'll sit here waiting to be motivated. Right? We can sit and just say, right, I am just not motivated to go out for a walk today in any way. Right. And so we wait for this internal like trigger or this internal thing to spur us into action, when often it can be quite the opposite, where the action itself can actually start that fire and get us motivated.
That's right. I think both are true. For sure. But I find myself, because I go between both, I go between highly motivated to like an extreme level. And I think this is part of being neurodivergent, which is part of my disorders along with all these other health things. And I only learned about this year. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is why my brain works this way. But I can be heavily motivated to the extreme level of not knowing what's going on around me. Like I'm just like 3 days into something and did I eat whatever, or I could be a potato and I'm doing nothing and I can't even move. I'm just potatoed. I'm like, okay, I can't. And so in those moments, the potato moments, because it's very hard on me because I'm one or the other. I'm very extreme, right? It's where I live. I'm either like my executive functions working very well, or it just doesn't work at all. And in those moments that it's not working, the one way that I do it is I do kind of force myself to get up. And not in a bad way, not like you must, not the drill sergeant way. Just like if I know I want to do something, like say I want to paint, but I just don't have the motivation to paint, I will say to myself, if you just go out there and you just pick up a paintbrush and you grab a little bit of a paper and you just, play around with it a little bit. If in 10 minutes you're not feeling it, go back and chill out. And almost always I feel better and I move into a space of wanting to do something. You know what I mean? Like, oh, okay, this is where it's at. Because sometimes our brains, we're so busy. As human beings, we live in a world where we're very busy. And I think this is probably why motivation is an issue for a lot of us. Because, 20, 30 years ago is very different. Now, we have all this internet and all these things coming in and out, and phones and text messages and emails and work emails and personal emails and communications and Snapchat and Facebook and podcasts. And I mean, there's just so much that I think that it actually affects our motivation because we have so much stimulus coming in that I feel like sometimes we're just overwhelmed by it.
Yeah. We're not able to process anymore. We have burned
Right.
out all of those little synapses very, very often. So there is, and it's escaped my mind right now, there is a psychological phenomenon that is true, that once you are in action, you actually generally find the motivation to stay in action. And so you will continue moving forward. But it's that step. And this is somewhere that I know I have countless conversations about this every week outside of my own brain. I have these conversations with clients and others in the industry where it is about how do we go from all this planning, all this thinking, all this stuff to then taking the step to be in action. And very often, Louise, with your question, very often we think we need to feel motivated to do that step, where it's just taking a leap of faith to get into action, then the motivation can come. And I agree. It's sometimes that motivation is just strong, but when we're not like that, that's that maintenance part of it. How do we maintain motivation when it's waning? Because it's impossible to live at that state of being highly motivated all the time. And I think to me, it's my understanding of the brain and how we work as human beings is it is taking that action that then creates the motivation. So thank you for asking the question.
I love the potato. It is in the potato moments that get really tough to pull yourself up off the couch or to pull yourself up into a place where that you really want to be. Right. And this is what we're talking about. If you want to be on the couch, be on the couch. Right. But we're talking about when we feel like we're not in alignment, when there's something else we want to be doing and we're not doing that.
Yeah. When we're ready and it's just not working. Right.
Yeah.
Rather than like, I'm in a potato moment and it's okay. Be in a potato moment. Because the thing is, I think we end up in a potato moment because we pressure ourselves to motivate ourselves too much. And then we become a potato.
Right. We've hit that level of overwhelm, whether it is, physically, psychologically, energetically, we hit this. And we absolutely have to become a potato. And I know for myself, who I dealt with some pretty severe depression in my 20s, finding the motivation in that context is different than the type of motivation that we're talking about. Totally. Right. When there is and I'm saying this for those that might be listening, when there's a clinical reason why you've decided to be a potato, you haven't decided. That's just, you are not physically capable to do something else. That's where you get help to find that motivation, to help move you through that process. This is that time where it's energetically, we just crash, or we're just not feeling it. I mean, there are those times where we're not even crashed, where it's just like, nope, not feeling it today. And that's okay too. If there's something that you want to or need to get done at that time, that's where I think we're saying is taking that step of action can be helpful to motivate you to move yourself forward.
That's right. And if you are somebody who's, dealing with depression or anxiety or things that are plaguing your life, which, I've definitely been there too, and, still live in the world of high anxiety, it's totally understandable to be able to recognize when you need that help, right? Like if it's happening and you can manage it, but when it becomes unmanageable and you start really being mad at yourself, or it's affecting your relationships, or if you're finding that certain things, it's not a poor reflection of you, because sometimes motivation and all of those things does not revolve around how we're thinking out of it, because sometimes we're chemically inept to function in a way that society or yourself believes that you should. And that's where sometimes pharmaceuticals can be supportive. Sometimes that's not a place. Sometimes it's, you need the right type of therapy or coach or something like that. But, don't feel awful if you can't, right? If you really are in a place you're listening to this and you can't, and you feel like you just really can't, then that's okay too. But there's obviously options and things that could help move through this. No one's really stuck anywhere permanently. There's always a place to get help. There's always something out there, even if you don't have friends or family. There are professionals and people, even if you don't have money, there are programs. There's always a place to seek help. You're never alone in what you're going through.
Yeah, it's that self-awareness piece, right? That really helps you determine where you're at, right? How many times, right, are you not doing what you want to be doing? How is what you're doing impacting your relationships? Like, we have to bring that self-awareness into the equation around, especially around motivation. What's causing our, right? What do we think is causing that lack of motivation? How long has it been happening? Sometimes we even forget about that too, right? Like, it just, days go by, turn into weeks and months sometimes, in a blink of an eye. And then the opposite is true as well, right? If we are highly motivated and we're moving towards something, we need to be self-aware to make sure we're filling our energy bucket and we're taking care of ourselves so that we can continue to operate in a space that we really want to be in. But we got to bring it back to being aware of self and where you're at, honoring your energy level, and making sure that your energy input is matching your output.
So many good things that we've been talking about today in terms of, well, just in terms of a lot of things, but really thinking on through this lens of motivation. It comes from a lot of different places, right? We've talked about action. We've talked about energy. We've talked about our well-being, our overall well-being, and the importance of being aware of ourselves, but also the importance of getting help when we need it. So I'm curious, as we come up to kind of the end to our conversation today, what are our takeaways? What are our golden nuggets? Those juicy little moments in our conversation that you're going to take and walk away with today?
Other than the potato moment, I'm going to use that often. I love that. It's very descriptive in just one word. I also love what you said earlier, Aunia, about learning to live in this gray area, that it's not always one or the other thing, right? Like, there's this place that it's still like, there's still color in the gray. It might not be as vivid as a sunshiny day, but there's still a place to play there. And we don't always have to be just pushing through that to get to the other side. So I really loved that just that idea of like, how do we play and live in the gray? Because that's often where we're mostly, right? It's not. And so, yeah, I really love that.
I think for me, I think the conversation overall is a golden nugget, because I think this conversation needs to be had more. And I think that people live with these emotions and they live dealing with, excuse me, self-hatred or inner critic and all of that. And I think conversations like this are the golden nugget, because people are going to see something and they're going to feel okay. They're going to feel better. They're going to feel seen, kind of like you had said, seen, heard, understood, not alone. Because the more that we speak about these types of conversations, the more that we pull the veil away. Because like you had said, Louise, earlier, it's all about being self-aware. Well, sometimes we're not self-aware. And then when we hear something, we then become self-aware, right? We don't know everything, but we hear things, and that's what lifts the veil for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, in mine, Aunia, is something that you said when you said achievement is not my identity. I'm sure I've said something along those lines, but just you said it so beautifully that way. Achievement is not my identity. And I know for me that definitely is something that I worked for a really long time to get over, that I didn't have to have. I didn't have to achieve to be me. I am going to, you can trademark it if you'd like, but I will definitely share it with my clients as well, who I know struggle with it, because it is, again, it's that I'm not going to say every woman, because not every woman identifies as somebody who is high achieving, but most women I know, and it could just be the women I know, do identify as high achieving. And breaking that idea that we have to operate in that space and be motivated constantly to achieve is, it gets to the core of identity. Like, if I'm not that, who am I? And so thank you for those just beautifully, eloquently said words that I'm going to take with me today. So,
I love that.
Thank you so much, Aunia, for joining us today and Kick-Ass Conversations. Really, really appreciate you being here and sharing with us. Can you let folks know where they can find you? How can they get in touch? And what do you got going on in the world?
Sure. So you can find me under my name, Aunia Kahn, AUNIAKAHN, on any social handle. And you can find my business, Rise Visible, RISEVISIBLE, on pretty much every channel as well, social and web. And yeah, I'm just very thankful to have had this opportunity to have this conversation and to be here. As for things going on with me, just being happy, being alive every day. So
that's huge.
It really is.
That's huge. Aunia, again, thank you so much. Continue doing such amazing stuff in the world and just being your beautiful, radiant self.
Huh. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye for now.